Welcome to episode 469 of Cinematary. I'm your host, Zach Dennis, and I'm here with
Grace Winburn
and Andrew Crawford.
In today's episode, we'll be talking about movies that we saw this week in part one.
Whoa, we're mixing it up.
It's gonna be one of those. It's gonna be one of those nights.
It's sleep day. Anything can happen.
Eve.
Yeah, we're just gonna kick it off with the part two movie, and then in part two, we're gonna be continuing our Betty and Joan series with 1950s All About Eve.
A banger movie.
Great movie.
So good.
Spoiler alert. Great movie. Well, cool. Let's jump into it. Out of the stuff that I've seen this past couple weeks, I got All of Us Strangers, which got like pretty solid acclaim, but then never came anywhere. I don't know about y'all. It never played anywhere near me, despite wanting to go see it.
I think it played in Knoxville, but definitely not at like the big theaters.
Oh
yeah. I'm not sure.
But for those interested, it's now on Hulu.
Nice.
But for the unacquainted with the movie, All of Us Strangers, directed by Andrew Haigh, stars Andrew Scott and Paul Mescal, and follows one night screenwriter Adam in his near-empty tower block in contemporary London has a chance encounter with his mysterious neighbor Harry that punctures the rhythm of his everyday life. As Adam and Harry get closer, Adam is pulled back to his childhood home where he discovers that his long-dead parents are both living and look the same age as the day they died over 30 years ago. So yeah, Andrew Scott plays Adam. Paul Mescal is the mysterious neighbor, Harry, and then Adam's parents are played by Jamie Bell and Claire Foy. And it's a pretty like that's pretty much all the people you interact with in this movie. I'm relatively familiar with Andrew Haigh. I've seen like 45 Years. I haven't seen, what is it, Weekend? Yeah. So I think 45 Years is honestly probably the only one I've seen. But this one's good. It just kind of has like this moodiness, this kind of neon moodiness to it. That's not necessarily like Wong Kar-wai, but like, in the same like vibe path. It's a lot of like you have like one portion where Adam and Harry go to like this nightclub, and it's the coolest nightclub ever because they're playing Pet Shop Boys, and that you have this whole sequence where you like cut from Frankie Goes to Hollywood's The Power of Love into Always on My Mind by Pet Shop Boys, and it's honestly like the greatest like one song to the other I've seen in a movie in a while. Like it's just like hits great, and it's all like you're in like a depression mood, being sad, but it's like a nice like comforting sad. It's great. So the vibes are pretty immaculate in a lot of the movie, and it just kind of has this like very lonely, distant quality to it that I think for people. I'm trying to compare it for I think you could compare it to like Spike Jonze movies or like Mike Mills movies, like just kind of like this this kind of moody sadness that like is not like oppressive, but just kind of is like this kind of nice little vibe. And like all the people in it are excellent actors. Like it's impacted. Like Andrew Scott is fantastic in this. I'm surprised he didn't get like an Oscar nomination. Paul Mescal is definitely secondary, but like he's just one of those, like every time he comes in, he's just really great. he's really good. I saw somebody on Twitter who was just like, Paul Mescal and All of Us Strangers just tells us that like if Paul Mescal shows up and is like sexy and depressed, like this movie's going to be a ride, and it's very much in that. It's in that it follows that after sun normal people path that he's going on. He's great in it. If he was sexy and depressed in Gladiator 2, like that could be a great movie. But their romance from beginning to like just kind of the they're both people who seem very distant to others, and I've like kind of found this connection between the two of them. They have this really one of the better shot like sex scenes in a movie in a while, like just this very like intimate, um, like very caring, like very like it reminds me of honestly some of the sex scenes that he has in like Normal People, or where like it's just very like conscious of the people. Like there is like this kind of human quality to it. It's not just kind of there to like go from one point to the other or just kind of be in there to be in there. Like it does add a lot of layers to not only their relationship but like the story and kind of who these two people are. And then but I think the real meat for me of the movie is so the way it kind of works, it reminds me a lot of like a ghost story in terms of just like like kind of depressive vibe movies. Like it reminds me a lot of a ghost story, not only in that he's talking to ghosts technically when he's talking to his parents, but also just because it's a movie that is very that's constantly very aware of like spaces and places, like moments, like kind of time froze, like moments of time frozen in like how that affects like a house or like a restaurant or something like that. Because what kind of triggers this is Andrew Scott goes back to his childhood home, and it's just kind of like looking around it, and then like his parents are there, which so it's almost like kind of activating like this portal into this world. But it's very you're not explaining the science, like they never like go into that. It's which I appreciate. It just kind of is like they're here, they're gonna have conversations. That's just what we're dealing with here. That's just what we're working with. And the majority of the conversation. So his parents, he was like a teenager when they died in a car crash one night, and both of them died. And he talks about it like that he had, went and lived with his grandmother, and so it had been 30 years since this had happened, and like a lot of the conversations that he had at the time, like he didn't get to come out to them like that, and so when they're like initially having conversations, they're not having it when they're asking about his life and knowing that he is, a gay man, when they're asking about stuff going on. And so there's like you have two really strong scenes with each parent. The first with Claire Foy playing the mother, where it's not like a super cliche, like, I hate this, you need to get out of my house. But like you can tell that she definitely has like a distance to it, and kind of like a lot of it seems based on like misunderstandings of like adults in the 1980s who probably are not engaging in conversations about the LGBTQ community a lot. So you can tell, and he kind of points this out to her. A lot of the stuff that she's basing it off of is like stuff in the news about AIDS and preconceptions like through media and things like that. And so that they have a conversation, and you can tell he's very, after having this really nice first interaction with the two of them, he goes the second time and has this very like distant conversation where his mom is very much like an arm's length from him whenever he reveals that. And then later he goes back and has a conversation with his dad, which I think is probably the best scene in the movie. Jamie Bell plays it really well as a dad who like also kind of has his preconceptions about it, and clearly like like shares some regret about the stuff he said to him and the way he acted toward him. He didn't know he was gay, but you could tell like having regret about like how he went about things and how he didn't handle the bullying that Adam dealt with as a child and things like that. And they have like a teary-eyed like hug that's really nice. It plays a little bit though. It does play a little bit as like, to a degree, like perfect scenario type. like you just kind of, even though the interaction of the mom is not like probably the reaction you want, like it does feel very like, you know, there's nuance to it, but it kind of feels like exactly like how you would probably play this out in your head, which is technically what he's doing. And a lot of the movie, I don't want to spoil the ending. The movie ends in a direction that I didn't dislike, but it just kind of left me with a weird impression of it. That I felt like coming away from it, I really liked a lot of it, but the ending really just didn't work for me. And it's based off of a short story or a book, I believe. But it's just, I don't like. Again, I don't know a lot about the book. I don't know if the character's gay in the book and that this is just how it ends, which would make more sense. But if it was, that's not the case in the book, and like Andrew Haig made these characters gay for this movie, and then that's how it ended. I kind of was like, I don't love that because we've seen that type of story a lot. And so overall, I'm positive on All of Us Strangers. I think it's definitely worth a watch. You have 4 just like standout performances. But I don't know. I guess I'm left kind of wanting a little bit more from it.
What type of story are you saying we have seen too much of already?
It ends with a gay character dying.
Okay.
And so it's
the bury your gays trope.
Yeah, and so this one, it's not like the worst offender of it. Like I think like the way it leads you in, like you're like, oh, okay, like it's. But I was kind of going like, oh, okay, but that's a bummer. That's a bummer that's how it ends, because like the one I really hate recently is the movie Close that came out last year or the year before. And it's about these kids and they're like best friends, but you can clearly tell that one of them is gay, or even both of them are gay, and they're both like 12-year-old boys who there is like this kind of standoffishness because they're getting made fun of because of the way that they're acting towards each other. And one of the kids commits suicide like halfway through the movie, and you're just like, it completely turned me off for the rest of the movie, because then the rest of the movie was just this kid having to process that, and I'm just like, and so I kind of have, I don't know, I've gotten a little tired of the kill your gays trope, and feel like at this point we have a lot of those. Like it's fine, like it's not like you have to rewrite movies, but at the same time, like I guarantee there's other ways to tell stories, whether it's any sort of story in the LGBTQ plus spectrum that doesn't have to end with the character, or end or begin or whatever with a character dying.
We did a series about that.
Yeah,
actually, the Feel Good Queer Movies series, Cinematary.com.
So I don't know. I still recommend All of Us Strangers. I think the vibes are immaculate a lot of the time, so that's cool. But it's on Hulu, so check it out there.
Nice.
But yeah, Andrew, I'm going to toss it over to you. I don't know which one you want to talk about, but
I'm going to try to very quickly do both. So for the last weekend, I had a little 2 nights back to back at Knoxville Central Cinema. Shout out to Central Cinema, a national treasure. We love it. They're doing a series right now where they are honoring filmmakers who are nominated for Oscars this year by showing some of their past work. So I caught for the first time Sideways by Alexander Payne, starring Paul Giamatti, both of which are up for Oscars for The Holdovers. Great movie. Me and Zach really enjoyed it at TIFF, wrote a little review for the site. And I also caught for like the 4th time Lady Bird by Greta Gerwig, who of course is up for Barbie. Actually, no, she's not up for Barbie, right? No. Controversially, not
America
up for
Ferrera
Barbie.
is.
Well, no, she the script is up for an Oscar though. She wrote the script with no.
Okay. Gerwig can still win an Oscar. But anyways, I'll start with Sideways. This is a 2004 dramedy starring Paul Giamatti as a wine snob,
Yeah.
which is a great trope for him to play, or archetype for him to play, because he's just like
Perfectly
miserable
suited.
enough, miserable and annoying enough for that. Annoying is probably the wrong word. Bitter is the right word.
He's pretty annoying though too.
He's annoying. Yeah, it's kind of a movie about annoying people being annoying to one another in various ways. But he's going on a road trip with an old friend of his from college, played by Thomas Hayden Church, who's like the polar opposite of him as a person. He's just like a total meathead. They don't really seem to have anything in common, and it's kind of funny to watch them drink and talk about wine together, because Paul Giamatti will talk about like the tasting notes and things like that, and Thomas Hayden's just like, tastes pretty good to me.
Yeah.
And a lot of the movie consists of Thomas Hayden Church trying to get Paul Giamatti laid, because Paul Giamatti is super divorced and hasn't been with anybody in a long time. Thomas Hayden Church is about to get married the next weekend and is also trying to get laid as like his last hurrah of freedom. And they both have dalliances with Virginia Madsen with Paul Giamatti and Sandra Oh for Thomas Hayden Church. Sandra Oh doesn't really get a whole lot to do in this movie other than be extremely hot, but she is extremely hot. That's kind of like the role that she is playing.
Virginia, girl. She's bartender bad girl with her motorcycle and everything. A single mom, even.
True.
She's plenty.
No shade to any bartender bad girls. Out there. Virginia Madsen has more like speechifying to do, but it is very much like it's a very male movie, and kind of about like male friendship and like the I don't know. I wish it went a little bit harder in like the struggle of connection between male friends. Like I wish it was more like Kelly Reichardt's Old Joy or something like that. I also kind of wish it went a little bit harder on the presence of alcoholism in the story. I going into it knowing the premise, I was kind of expecting that to be the focal point, but it's really not. It's more about Paul Giamatti's sense of self-esteem and direction in life, and he's also really wrapped up in this like book deal that he's trying to make happen that ultimately falls apart. And I also went into this wondering if the Holdovers was like, I wasn't getting like the real Alexander Payne. Like this is like, the stuff he's doing now, but he got famous for this stuff back in the early 2000s. You need to go watch like the real stuff. And I felt that this was a little tepid in comparison, to be honest. I felt like his the writing was sharper, the emotions were stronger, the cinematography felt more thoughtful in the Holdovers than it did in Sideways. But Zach, you've seen this. Do you have any quick thoughts on it?
No, I like Sideways. I like Sideways. He wrote Sideways though. He didn't write Holdovers.
Oh, so is that true?
That might be something also. Yeah, because he's somebody who generally like writes his own stuff. That the Holdovers was kind of like a weird outlier.
Okay.
Which might just kind of show that like he's a better director than a writer. I don't know.
Sure.
But I like Holdovers. Like Paul Giamatti's great, is just kind of annoying. Thomas Hayden Church is just super funny.
He's probably the best part of the movie.
He's really great.
Yeah.
He has a little bit more to do than like his character in Wings, but it's very similar. It's just like it's kind of like a himbo guy who's just like, I'm just here, just being an idiot. I remember in college for one of the classes I took with Dr. Larson, we watched the scene where it's Virginia Madsen and Paul Giamatti, and he's like talking about the wine to her. It's like
later where Paul Giamatti's talking about the wine.
Well, no, but there's like the one, and it's like them two together, and they're like out on like this kind of patio thing, and he's describing the wine. I think that's the first time I like saw anything from Sideways. No, I think it's good. Yeah, after recently seeing The Holdovers, though, I like that better.
Oh, and Grace, did you say you had seen it as well?
Yeah, I've seen Sideways. I've seen I saw it twice. The second time I paid a little more attention to the care that they gave the wine and the writing. Like that scene that you're talking about, Zach, it makes me think that, like, you know, as much as they're talking about the wine, the grape, they're talking about themselves. Paul Giamatti is a grape. He's going through his drought. And then, you know, if we crush him up, like, you know, what comes out. And, but everyone is pretty pathetic, and they can all be kind of hard to like. They're all pretty unlikable. Again, with like The Holdovers, everyone's a little more noble. There's a little more of a tug on your heartstrings. These are just kind of selfish people doing selfish things, justifying their actions, whatever they want, to get what they want. But still very good, very affecting, very pretty, very scenic. I really liked, you know, traveling all through Napa Valley. It was gorgeous.
Yeah.
You know,
I've seen that
whine on and on about it, but
I've seen that that like not really complaint, but like people pointing out about The Holdovers, how like overall the characters are all like virtually like kind of good people, and like not necessarily comparing it to Sideways, but just like the point you made, Grace, like they're all kind of shitty people to a degree.
yeah.
You know, not necessarily bad people, but just making a lot of shitty decisions. And so I don't know if that like people latch onto that more than like The Holdovers, which seems more like tidy and like good.
I mean, The Holdovers, I think the characters have noble intentions ultimately, but like as a teacher, I can't look at Paul Giamatti's character in The Holdover and be like, oh yeah, that guy's on the up and up, like 100%. That's how teachers should act. But anyways, I should switch.
Were you gonna say something, Grace?
Oh, no, not really.
Okay. Well, I will also give a shout out to Lady Bird, which just continues to absolutely rock. It's such a good movie. Crazy that it came out like 7 years ago. It seems like such a recent release to me, but this movie holds up. If you haven't seen it since it came out in theaters, you should definitely go back and rewatch it. It is just incredibly witty, incredibly watchable, and like it just moves. Like the editing in Lady Bird is so good. It is like sprinting through a school year, and it just kind of moves so fluidly from scene to scene and from season to season. I actually noticed at one point there's a moment where you hear an audio cue that you don't actually see the visual that goes along with the audio cue until you've kind of watched two other like super fast scenes, you know, that leading up to it. The way this movie is edited together is like there are some scenes that are just scenes, but there are actually a lot of just kind of these little snapshots of like, here's this little drama exercise they're doing in theater, and then here's another one, and here's another one, like rapid fire. And like it's all kind of like strewn together with these great like needle drops as well. I really like the way in which she uses the Dave Matthews Band needle drop throughout to, you know, make some sort of statement about like the way we think about like high culture and low culture and the way that individual people, you know, engage with art and find meaning in it. And yeah, I don't really have all that much to say about it other than this movie still slaps. Greta Gerwig is a real one, and I hope she's able to continue making actually good movies into the future. Not to say that Barbie wasn't a good movie, but I am a little worried about the like Chronicles of Narnia thing if she's doing for Netflix. That does not bode well. I don't think.
Yeah. I rewatched this recently because I also rewatched Little Women for the first time since like it had come out. Which
also
both
so
are just
good.
Also just both really, really good movies. And yeah, it made me not like dislike Barbie. Like I still think Barbie is solid. But I was kind of just disappointed by it because like Lady Bird and Little Women, like you talked about, like they're edited so crisply, like it just like
Mhm.
scoots. And Barbie doesn't have that. I don't know if that's because it's you got the studio involvement, or
Yeah,
it's
it
she
feels
didn't have the
like
same
a very
editor.
compromised movie.
Yeah, and so like I don't really falter for that. That's fine. But also you just have like this really like curious, assured, like very confident energy in these movies, and you have that as well in Barbie. Like she's super confident through that movie, but like because those, like, I think Little Women and Lady Bird are coming from different places. They're not big blockbuster studio movies. Like there's something much more like relatable to the confidence that like makes it feel like they just go so smoothly. And yeah, I hope that I get that money, get that green, but like I do hope that she finds her way back to like these kind of smaller movies, because I think that both of those are like just really really strong.
Yeah, and I mean, it doesn't even have to be that small, right? Like Little Women is a pretty big movie in terms of like number of big names on
Mhm.
screen. It's an adaptation of a major IP that a lot of people know. The period costuming and staging is all like really elaborate and beautiful, but it is like committed to the cinema of it all, like every step
Yeah.
of the way. And Barbie is too, for sure. It's doing a different thing with the campy production design, but it also like just doesn't feel as like tight and as focused on like a script level to me, because it's having to do like the franchise IP corporate thing.
Mhm.
So we'll see if she's able to kind of stick to her guns, cinematically speaking. But I think that Greta Gerwig is like an insanely talented director, and
Oh, 100%.
in addition to the ones we've been talking about, Lady Bird and Little Women, I think that a lot of her prior collaborations with Noah Baumbach, like
Yeah.
Frances Ha and Mistress America, she kind of deserves authorship on those movies too. And
Mhm.
it is like such a huge part of why they work. So if people have not seen those and they're Greta Gerwig heads now, then they should get to look at that as well.
I'm surprised Francis. I mean, I think people definitely dig Francis Ha, but like the people who dig Francis Ha have a Criterion Collection
Yeah.
subscription. I wish Francis Ha was a little bit more like widely beloved, because I'm like, yeah, that movie kind of has, it's almost like Greta Gerwig's Lady Bird to a degree, like in terms of like for her as an actress.
I mean, it also feels like a Lady Bird in a way kind of feels like a prequel to
Yeah.
Frances Ha. They're both of those characters are very autobiographical, it feels like, but there's kind of snapshots of different stages of her life.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah, that's all I got.
Cool. All right. Well, we're gonna be taking a short break, and then we're gonna be what All About Eve reference can I make?
Fasten your seatbelts. It's gonna be a bumpy night.
That's coming later. I had that planned. All right, we're gonna go into part 2. Where we're talking all about Eve after this. And we're back with part 2 of episode 469 of Cinematary. And buckle up, kids. Buckle your seatbelts. We're gonna have a bumpy podcast.
Wow. I think Grace did it better.
Yeah, she really kind of jumped in on me, really.
I think it's fasten.
The theater minor.
I don't think you buckle. I think you fasten.
Fasten your seatbelts. It's gonna be a bumpy podcast.
There you go.
All right. All About Eve, 1950. Written and directed by Joseph Mankiewicz. The film stars Bette Davis, Ann Baxter, George Saunders, Celeste Holm, Gary Merrill, and Thelma Ritter. Any movie where Thelma Ritter is just kind of like, you know what, I know more than you, is a great movie. That should be a letterbox list of movies with Thelma Ritter kind of knowing what's going on before any of the characters do.
True.
Backstage.
And Marilyn Monroe.
Yeah, Marilyn Monroe.
Her debut.
Oh, it's her debut. I didn't know that.
That's what I read.
This is a backstage story revolving around aspiring actress Eve Harrington. Tattered and forlorn, Eve shows up in the dressing room of Broadway megastar Margot Channing, telling a melancholy life story to Margot and her friends. Margot takes Eve under her wing, and it appears that Eve is a conniver that uses Margot. Mary Orr adapted her short story The Wisdom of Eve into a radio play before selling the film rights. It aired on NBC's Radio City Playhouse in 1949, starring Claudia Morgan and Marilyn Erskine. Orr received no on-screen or official credit for her story, which 20th Century Fox purchased for $3,500. In 1951, the screenplay of All About Eve was published in book form, and according to 20th Century Fox records, screenwriter-director Joseph Mankiewicz received 2/3 of the profit, with Orr receiving 1/3. Orr revealed in an October 1950 Variety article that the story was inspired by the actual experience of Polish-born actress Elizabeth Bergner, who had once befriended an unscrupulous young actress. In a modern interview, however, Orr noted that, quote, Eve Harrington was a combination of many young actresses I had met, including a great deal of myself. In another interview, Mankiewicz disclosed the archetype for the character Margot Channing was 18th century English actress Peg Woffington, adding that she represented, quote, every woman for whom acting was identical with existence. Some reviews claim that Bette Davis based her Margot characterization on husky-voiced star Tallulah Bankhead, and despite Davis's denials, these rumors persisted. In an interview, Davis said, quote, Tallulah herself, more than anyone else, accused me of imitating her as Margot Channing. The problem was that I had no voice at all when I started filming All About Eve, due to the emotional stress as a result of she was going through a divorce at the time. This gave me the famous husky Bankhead voice. Otherwise, I don't think the similarity to Bankhead in my performance would ever have been thought of. The character of critic Addison DeWitt was widely believed to have been based on New York critic George Jean Nathan, but Mankiewicz maintained that there was, quote, no basis for a serious identification of the real and fictional critics. Mankiewicz invented both the Sarah Siddons Society and the Sarah Siddons Award for the film. To his surprise, the award that he, quote, dreamed up as an object of satire was taken seriously, and in 1952, a real Sarah Siddons Society inspired by the English tragic actress was founded in Chicago. The first Sarah Siddons Award, which was an exact replica of the statuette used in the film, was bestowed on Helen Hayes. Mankiewicz and producer Daryl Zanuck initially considered Susan Hayward for the role of Margot, but decided she was not old enough. Claudette Colbert was cast as Margot in February of 1950, but was forced to withdraw from the production when she injured her back. Zanuck then suggested casting Marlena Dietrich as Margot, Jeanne Crane as Eve, John Garfield as Bill Sampson, and Jose Ferrer as Addison DeWitt. Mankiewicz sought noted stage actress Gertrude Lawrence for the role of Margot, but her attorney insisted the screenplay be changed so that she did not smoke or drink in the picture and would sing a torch song about Bill in the party scene. Zanuck also sought Ingrid Bergman to replace Colbert, but the actress refused to leave Italy, where she was living for the production. During filming, Davis and co-star Gary Merrill, who was married at the time, became romantically involved. Davis and Merrill married in July 1950 and adopted a baby girl whom they named Margot. With the release of All About Eve, 20th Century Fox inaugurated a revolutionary scheduled performances screening policy, which required exhibitors to show the film only at designated times with no late seating. The purpose is to make patrons see the picture from the beginning so that they may fully understand and enjoy the proceedings, and thus give it favorable word-of-mouth advertising. The studio also stipulated in its exhibition contracts that the film receive single billing. No other feature-length picture could be shown on the same program. This policy was tested at the film's world premiere run at New York's Roxy, but after a week of scheduled performances, the Roxy reverted to the established practice of running the film continuously and permitting patrons to enter at any time. According to an October 18, 1950 news item in the Hollywood Reporter, quote, confusion arose because of the public's deeply ingrained habit of going to a movie show at any desired hour when most convenient or on impulse. The New York Times in 1950 said, although the title character, the self-seeking, ruthless Eve, who would make a Black Widow spider look like a ladybug, is the motivating figure in the story. It is played by Anne Baxter with icy calm. The focal figure and most intriguing character is the actress whom Bette Davis plays. This lady, an aging acid creature with a cankerous ego and a stinging tongue, is the end all of Broadway disenchantment, and Miss Davis plays her to a fare thee well. The New Yorker in 1950 said Bette Davis finally has a part that permits her to demonstrate in her high voltage style that when her talents are applied to something worthwhile, she can really bring a great deal of authority to bear. Purportedly a woman of 40 in love with a younger man, Miss Davis, often in unflattering makeup, jumps from comedy to pathos to hysteria with utter confidence, and she winds up by transforming a most difficult character into a lady who, however shrilly emotional, commands the sympathy of one and all. And Roger Ebert in 2000 said, growing older was a smart career move for Bette Davis, whose personality was adult, hard-edged, and knowing. Never entirely comfortable as an ingenue, she was glorious as a professional woman, a survivor, or a bitchy predator. Her veteran actress Margot Channing in All About Eve was her greatest role. It seems to show her defeated by the wills of a younger actress, but in fact marks a victory, the triumph of personality and will over the superficial power of beauty. She never played a more autobiographical role. All right, and on that note, All About Eve. Grace, I guess I'll toss it over to you first.
Sure. Where to begin? I'll just say that this is a second watch for me. I simply adore it. I'm all about Eve. I'm all about Bette. I'm all about Margot. This is such an interesting anti-Hollywood film. It's so pro-theater. It's so disparaging of the industry. And this feels like such a departure and a farewell from, I mean, I don't really know what's going on with Mankiewicz at this point, but I know what's going on with Bette at this point, and it feels like it is her farewell and departure from the film industry in Hollywood, and this her embracing what independent filmmaking or what independent theater or an independent life for her could represent. At this point in her career, she has broken her contract with Warner Brothers. She's left Warner Brothers. She's going through a very public divorce and a very public marriage, very quick marriage too. It was a very public divorce from her third husband, William Grant Sherry. The two had just recently had a baby together, Barbara Davis, so BD. So, you know, she really loves herself. So give her own child her initials. But so they had just had a baby. She had just returned to Hollywood and was looking to really sink her teeth into these serious roles. And Margot is that. Margot is the role that she has always wanted, or she's always fought her entire career to play. And she's finally mature enough to play that, because in Now Voyager, she plays such a mature woman going through mature life changes, and she's very young, and it's like a costume, you know. So to see her finally fully suited for the part that she plays is very refreshing, and she plays it so well. She wears it so well. This is definitely her movie, and you know, though she isn't in all of it. And then the first time I watched it, I was like, okay, great, I'm ready to learn all about Eve. And I thought that Eve was Betty's character, and I was surprised to learn that she's playing someone else. And so I had to quick adjust to that. But
I love that the poster is like a bunch of arrows pointing at Anne Baxter with Bette Davis off to the side. But as great as Anne Baxter is in this movie, I completely agree that like it is Bette Davis's movie. She's just like commands your attention every time she's on screen, and it's such a great witty script with such like amazing repartee between all the actors, and Bette Davis just like gets so many amazing, just venomous lines. Like everything that comes out of her mouth is so cruel, but delivered like so perfectly. And it is kind of a shame when we lose sight of her about 75% of the way through the movie. But I also kind of like how the movie is this ever shifting, ever evolving thing. It's kind of like a mystery, but it's not any kind of mystery that we're really all that acquainted with. There's not really another movie quite like it. It's just such a uniquely shaped thing. So I guess if it was just Bette Davis's movie all the way through, like now Voyager, for example, for as non-traditional as that movie's structure is, I think that it would be a little bit more ordinary if we were just following her the whole time.
Yeah, I was thinking about it today. This is the second time I'd seen this movie, and I was thinking about it this morning, and I don't think I could recall a scene from the movie, even though I had seen it before. That's just more a fault of my own. And so it was like this, watching it this time, I think it just hit a lot more impactfully. I agree, Andrew, with what how you kind of describe it. It does feel very much like it starts out as kind of like a whodunit, because you have this voiceover and it's very coy, and you don't know who it's really talking to, and it's going to these different faces, and then this award being given.
The narration also shifts at multiple points. Sometimes we're getting what's her name? Is it Karen?
Karen,
yeah. And sometimes we're getting the critic character narrating to us.
Yeah.
We're never getting either of our protagonist characters narrating, interestingly. It's always kind of from an outside perspective.
Yeah, it's never Eve or Margot. And the character of Eve, Anne Baxter's really good, but it's she never, you're always kind of as another person observing Eve. Eve's always kind of distant, and that's what kind of makes her character very interesting. But at the same time, to your point, Bette Davis and Margot kind of disappear to a degree, 75% into the movie, but she hangs over everything. She just really commands and hangs over the movie, even when she's not on screen.
Yeah, when we circle back around to the frame device at the beginning of the movie, and you just see she gets one more line or something congratulating Eve on her win, but you also see that shot of her just kind of looking up with her cigarette, kind of bemused as Eve is thanking her in her acceptance speech, and because of kind of the weight that her character has kind of accumulated over the course of the movie, that kind of takes on a new light as well.
Yeah,
very much. Margot is just so theater. And then sorry, one thing that I really enjoyed is that we don't see Margot ever give a performance, because her just being herself is an entire production. But everything that Eve does is a performance. There's always some sort of a monologue, some sort of a story for her to tell, to sort of get lost in and sort of charm her listeners, her audience, and sway them. She is so cunning and so careful. But there was something so she said it, she admitted it from the very beginning when I used to make believe a lot, and sometimes what was make believe felt more real than what was real, and what was real felt more so it's even you get a feeling that even to her that she can't even really distinguish it herself. Maybe she isn't so sure of what her truth is, but I guess the truth for her is whatever it is she wants in that moment. And it's it's the men in front of her, it's the connections that they offer, it's the chance up the ladder that they provide her. And then there's also this really interesting sort of using your femininity to get what you want, and you lose your femininity to tackle this world, when Margot says that funny, the things that you leave behind so you can climb up the ladder faster. And one of the things you leave behind is being a woman. But like Eve is always constantly like putting her femininity, her womanhood on display, this like younger womanhood that she has to offer. And that's more exciting, the shiny newness. A lot going on, but just the two main leads are just so unique, and special.
I feel like there's so many like different directions that I want to go after those points, Grace. But I guess circling back to the speech, the monologue that Eve gives when we first have her meet Bette Davis's character. I love that monologue. I think it's so interesting. It's a case of a actor having to play a character who themselves is acting and has to give a compelling and persuasive performance, but also has to leave just a hint of like, is she making this up though? And the beginning of the movie introducing us to her as a accomplished actor kind of preps you to think about, her as someone with acting skills that you should therefore kind of be skeptical of at any moment, like when is she employing those acting skills. It's very much like a movie about performance and theater. I'm actually surprised that no one quotes the "all the world's a stage" Shakespeare line at one point or another. But there is also that speech from I forget which the writer or no, the director guy who's talking about like, theater, what you think of as theater is like your theater, but all these things are theater. TV is theater. Looney Tunes are theater. Sock puppets are theater.
Punch and Judy.
Exactly. Yeah. But she knows very well at that moment, right, that she's playing a role and saying things in order to play off of other people. But the other thing you mentioned about like using femininity in those performances, I think this is a really interesting like quasi-feminist text. I would be curious to hear your thoughts on it, Grace. Like, how much feminism do you see in this movie? Because it simultaneously feels to me like it is this eviscerating takedown of the way that these entertainment industries are kind of like consuming and expending like the youthful beauty of young women and just like trading them in for younger models, but also kind of trafficking in this somewhat sexist trope of like, well, what did she do to get to the top? She must have just slept with somebody to get to where she is. It's not actual talent or drive or whatever. But I mean, it's kind of both of those things. I don't know. What do you think?
That's a hard question. I don't know if I really picked up on that in either of my watches. I don't know if that's, I guess it's kind of something that's always on my mind. I look at the female friendships and the way that between Bertie and Margot, and then with the introduction of Anne, how she kind of usurps Bertie of her role as confidant and friend. So then I look at that dynamics, but I couldn't dissect the feminism there and that. But just really like what I said earlier about just picking up on age, femininity, and maturity. That's just like the big sticking point. She can pretend to play these parts. She can Margot can make believe that she's as young as 20 on the stage, and also maybe, the theater kind of affords the bigger suspension of disbelief.
Distance.
Yeah. So she's able to pull that off. And then in Hollywood, it's very much a youth culture, a young woman culture. So I don't know. That's tricky. I'll have to think a little more on that.
Yeah, well, and it's interesting. because I think the relationship between theater and movies is also fascinating because you think about any sort of like form of media like that, like movies is very much working off of the theater. Like that's kind of that's kind of what it originated from, similar to like how TV originated out of movies, and like video games kind of originate out of movies to a degree, at least on like the bigger scale. And so like to me, like that was kind of fascinating, this relationship between the movies and theater, because they're two like they're similar but two wildly different things. And it's kind of interesting that you see neither of their performances, but you like the performances that they're giving outside of like the theater stage feel theatrical, yes, but also very like akin to movies. Like they feel in a way that like the camera is on them, which is very specific to the movies compared to theater.
I think that Eve gives more of a film performance that's very. It's all right here. It's all in her face. It's very close. They have these medium to
absolutely
close-ups, and then Betty and Margot gives much more theatrical, like stage performances. She is playing for the person in the back row to hear and see and feel her pain. There even seem to be like some moments of her even like directing herself after her big blow up between her and Bill, when she's sitting on the stage and the audition has just happened. As he's walking away, you can kind of see like part of her hand as she counts out his steps to make sure that he's like not off stage yet, and then signals to herself. So she's directing herself, she's playing herself, but her world is theater. Eve's is to film, to the next applause, and also there seems to be a less respect for the craft from Eve than from Margot.
Sure. That's why it's like that. It's like kind of, it's similar in like the handoff between, like if Eve signals like the next wave, like this is the next great, like that makes sense that she has a very movie star performance, because the future, the future's in movies.
The future is female.
Like you kind of have that there. And to me, like this is kind of an interesting theater to movies transition movie, because I agree. I think it's kind of, it's very much in the realm of even I feel like in 1950, it's not, I don't think there's like, unless you're in New York, there's like more people are going to have access to go see a movie than a Broadway play, so it's just a lot more accessible.
I liked this world though that this takes place in, because it also kind of felt like theater is everything and it minimizes film. Like when Addison says in that first monologue, he's like, for that award show, for that film society that they hand out. And then at the very end with, the new Eve sort of coming up the ladder, who's obsessed and a high schooler. And she, stakes out Eve's apartment. She's a part of the Eve Harrington Society, and that all the high schools have this. And it felt like there was this sort of like interesting little world happening, so, almost like a little science fiction. Like this isn't the real world that we know, where like theater reigns supreme, and that it is the end all be all form of art and high art and accessible art. The way that like theater is for us. So this, it's so unique to step inside that.
Yeah.
It feels very modern. It feels like it's chronicling this paradigm shift from like a world where people went into this entertainment industry because they wanted to be artists, to one where people enter it because they just want to be famous. Which I feel like is so much more. You can see the connections more to like influencer culture in the 21st century than I think of like 1950s golden age of Hollywood kind of thing. But
no, it's a good point, because you think, especially in the last scene with Phoebe when she's in the apartment, like, because Eve
Right.
There's still like a drama to Eve. There's still like she's like in the rain, like hiding, like, is Margot Channing there? There's like a drama to it. And like in the whole like kind of meeting feels much more dramatized than like, I mean, she's in her apartment, but like the way Eve kind of interacts with her, and then it takes Eve, at least in our perception, like it takes Eve a number of weeks before you see her looking at herself in the costume, and Phoebe is immediately like picking up the outfit and looking at herself, and then it goes into the shot of just the mirror shot of Phoebe.
Amazing.
Because it's just like, yeah, like they're just out there, they're all over.
I wonder if Zach, you said you feel like you didn't remember any scenes from this movie, despite having seen it before, and that was true for me as well. Like I knew kind of the broad strokes of this being about a up and coming young ingenue kind of replacing an old guard actress, but I didn't remember any scenes, and I wonder if that is because the movie just isn't super interested in visuals a lot of the time. Like it is very theatrical. It's about dialogue. It's about banter.
Yeah.
But that last shot though, like that's movies. That's
a movie shot.
They created an image that is, a perfect crystallization of like all the ideas that this movie is exploring, and I just love that image. That was the one thing that I remembered most vividly about it, was the last shot.
Yeah, I would say that's true. That's probably why I don't, because like I'm kind of like Denis Villeneuve in that interview he did this week, where he was just like, yeah, like movies are about images, man. Like it's not about the talking. Like that's you think of an image in a movie. You think of like what something looked like. That's why you watch movies.
Exactly.
And so I think that's kind of, again, like to me, I don't know, I'm very like stringent on like movies do this, like this is what movies do, this is what books do, this is what theater does, this is what, and so I'm just like, yeah, like that's what I'm going to remember. Like, are there great lines? 100%. Like Bette Davis is like tossing them out like at a speed that Groucho Marx would be jealous of.
Yeah, so many that you can't remember any of them because there are too many to hold in your brain.
It's like she would have fit in Duck Soup. Like it's fantastic, but yeah, like there's last. I mean, there are great images in this, but nothing as like permeating as the last one. Grace, you were gonna say something?
Oh no, I just wanted to try and see if I could rattle off any Bette Davis lines. I'll admit I'm a little more mature, but I'm still not to be had for the price of a cocktail, like a salted peanut. Like that, or terms are too high, unconditional surrender. That, maybe now I have some more thoughts on feminism and, what it means to be a woman.
Yeah, go off.
No, but, it was, I latched onto a lot of what was said. This was a lot meatier and juicier text than what we get. Really a talkie, and I don't know, like if we're to compare, if this was a whole series on Betty and Joan and we compare the two, there's a reason why Betty is the actress and Joan is the star. So then would Joan be our Eve and Betty's still Margot? Maybe.
Yeah. No, that's true. I mean, like like when I was doing the research and they were talking about like Claudette Colbert or Marlene Dietrich or Susan Hayward, like as the Margot character, it's like, yeah, but like those are at least, especially like all three of them are like movie stars. Like those are movie stars. But like this isn't a movie star role. Like this is as you were talking about before, Grace. Like this is somebody you got to be able to like throw it, like just throw out lines, and it's very dictatorial, and it's just very like you're chewing up scenery as you would in a play. Like it's not really a movie.
Yeah, as much as I like Marlene Dietrich, I'm glad that this is a Bette Davis movie and not a Marlene Dietrich movie.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, me too.
So
She'd be
Marlene
beautiful
Dietrich,
to look at.
Yeah, she would be amazing. But no, it's just, and so yeah, like this is, like Betty could do Possessed, but Joan couldn't do all of it.
Couldn't do. No, definitely not.
No, like like this is kind of if you're kind of like comparing the two, you're going like, yeah, this is the one that sets one of them apart because the other could not do this role.
Yeah.
It would be tough.
She got nominated for this one. This was an Oscar nomination for
Wait,
Bette.
what did she lose to?
A Julie Holiday movie, I think is what I'm serious. Like I was looking it up and I'm like, who is that? I don't know. But it was.
This is why, like in 2 weeks when the Oscars happen, I don't care because
I don't know. She was nominated for this. Like that.
And it broke records. It was the most nominations for any movie ever.
Best Picture, Best Director, Best Supporting Actor, Best Actress.
It won Best Picture.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah. Well, it's a very like,
and Best Supporting Actor, George Sanders, Addison DeWitt.
Even though it's like a
we want to watch that.
Like a kind of a theater movie, like it's still a very like Hollywood movie because I mean you got like Joseph Mankiewicz making it and Bette Davis in it and but you got big like old Hollywood names attached to it.
So many olds. I don't know if Bette would like how many you used just then. old, ancient, prehistoric Hollywood. Okay, we get it. She's 40. Give my girl a break. There was something just so beautiful to see her in all of her glory with her wrinkles and a little bit of saggy, just like her natural beauty and age and maturity that had caught up to her, and just to make her all the more distinguished. And I mean, like, I believed every second that Gary Merrill said that he was in love as Bill Safdie. I mean, like, he was, because they were having an affair, but I mean, look at her, she's beautiful.
Yeah
no, she's great in it. So, any last thoughts on All About Eve? If you would like to watch it,
we say this occasionally. I'm sure that there are very few people listening to our podcast who don't already like watch old movies habitually. But I think this is one of a select few like really great like introductory old Hollywood movies. I think you could show this to just about anybody without them having a lot of familiarity with like the rhythms of an old Hollywood movie, and they would find it engaging and exciting. It's just holds up so incredibly well, and it kind of stands out among older Hollywood films as just kind of having a certain unpredictability and like vivacity to it. There's just so much so much life to that screenplay, kind of larger than life, really. Kind of impossible not to like, I think.
Yeah. Grace?
No, I have nothing left to say. I left it all on the court, Coach.
But I co-sign what you say, Andrew. If you have not seen it, you can rent it at your local library, or they have a wonderful cut of it on archive.org that you can use to watch for free. So check out. I don't know. It's longer than you expect. I forgot how long it is.
It's 2.5 hours, yeah. But it kind of speeds by. Yeah.
It flies, but I cranked it up and I was just like, that's that long? Mm-hmm. Mainly because like in terms of movies around this period, they're like, it's generally not that long.
90 minutes tops.
Yeah. They just had a lot to put in. There's it's all about Eve, guys, not some of Eve.
That's right. I actually really like it in the first scene. They say, we'll learn about Eve, about Eve, in fact.
Drink.
It was real like Leo in Once Upon a Time, like pointing at the screen, like, yeah. All right. Well, that'll wrap up this episode of Cinematary. You can find us on Facebook at facebook.com/Cinematary, or on Twitter and Instagram at Cinematary to learn more there. Go over to Letterboxd. We list all the movies that we talked about in this episode on letterboxd.com/Cinematary. And if you'd like to support the show, patreon.com/Cinematary. Thank you to our patrons, Cam, Ron Hayes, Tanner Huskins, Risa Morsathi, and Tyler Chandler. We appreciate your patronage. Next week we're going to be wrapping it all up. We're going to be
Godzilla versus King Kong.
No.
It's Whatever Happened to Baby Jane, starring both Betty and Joan. So stick around for that episode. Thank you for listening. We'll see you then.